So, the last few years. So basically what's happening is Big Beverage are divesting from beer. So they're all moving into all these other alternatives. They're all releasing non-alc versions of their products. And a really great example is PBR. I had a friend that worked on the innovation portion of this out of the LA Insights agency. And they made a whole bunch of recommendations, and PBR has released all of these beverages. They have a low alcohol version, they have a non-alcohol version, and I have no idea who's drinking non-alcoholic PBR, but people are. They have released a coffee version, they've released a vodka version, they're also released a THC version. The way they legally did that was create another company, license the brand, and these people quit this company and then started again in the new company, and now they have Pabst Labs, THC, Seltzers, based out of California. They're going to be coming to New York probably next year, which I will get into. Overall category is massive, massive growth, so $23 billion at the moment for beer with a huge growth rate. And then right now, Dan nailed as well, $10 billion market for the global no and low. So right now that's 3.5%. They anticipate a significant growth rate. So we're looking at this huge macro movement, and it's basically consumers are really realizing, thinking about what alcohol, they don't like hangovers anymore. There's all of the reasons that Dan spoke about why this trend is happening. And Big Beverage are really doing their best to kind of help ride this wave and kind of divest from alcohol. But long story short, they suck at it. So it's an opportunity for founders. The World Health Organization actually has a 10-year plan to reduce overall alcohol consumption around the world. They're a few years into it, and the way they're doing it is by influencing regulation, and one of those regulations that they have a small influence on was the official recommendations of your daily intake of alcohol. The US has officially reduced it from 2 to 3 glasses a day of wine to 1 and 2 respectively. So that's a massive change. You have a national group that says everybody needs to reduce their alcohol intake. And so, alcohol consumption. There's top 3 countries. I'm going to give you the first one because it's really difficult, but the Czech Republic is the number 1 on alcohol consumption in the world, 10 million people. What is the second and the third in terms of alcohol consumption? Which countries? Australia, no, not there. Think about it. Beer, one of them is a lot about beer. Germany, yes, that's 2. 3? Who else drinks a lot? They do, but it's close. The Irish, Ireland. Czech Republic, Germany, Ireland. Total amount in alcohol consumption. Germany, 80 million people, so that's significant, right? Germany is also the number 1 consumption in non-alc and low-alc, which is very interesting. Highest alcohol consumption, highest amount of no and low alcohol consumption, including beer. Yes, per capita, exactly. So, this is moving into the non-alc space here. So we have this compound annual growth rate of 28%. So basically, we're talking about the category increasing by a third every year for the next few years, which is massive. And we just spoke about Big Beverage moving into alternatives. I was going to talk about non-alc versus alc-free and the 0.0 and 0.5, but Dan already did a great job of that, so I don't have to touch on that. COVID, obviously a lot of things happened during COVID, but people started taking their own health and wellness, taking responsibility for it, and they started thinking about what they were eating, thinking about their exercise, thinking about what they were consuming, and that actually was a huge growth opportunity for the non-alc market. And interesting, during this coronavirus, Corona as a brand just distanced themselves. They did the do nothing strategy. They didn't talk about it. They knew that they thought their sales would go down. Guess what happened to Corona sales in Australia? They went up by 17% because Australians thought it was funny, so they bought more Corona beer. So this is a really interesting slide. So non-alc, very small market. On the right-hand side is market size, but what we're seeing, this is last year in the US. We have non-alc spirits growth, non-alc beer growth, and non-alc wine growth. Huge, huge, huge growth. And then for the first time, maybe ever, we actually have a decrease or a shrinkage in market size of alcohol. Now, yes, COVID and on-trade, there's those elements, but basically this is kind of like the first time in history where this is happening, and I think the contrast between these two is really important for us to consider. So, cannabis. Cannabis is coming, and we're excited about it, and we're helping build the future of drinking. Right now, the cannabis beverage growth is 40%, so pretty significant. They estimate that last year was $650 million worth, and that's just in the legal states. So there's about, right now, There's adult use states and medical states. There's 31 of them that have legalized it in some way. So over 60% of Americans have access to legal cannabis. The global estimate is 3 billion by 2028. So a massive, massive market. And this is just legal cannabis beverages. And then, as you heard last year, a bunch of states legalized it. They're in the process of improving the regulations. Everybody is New York legal right now? Technically, it's not. But the regulations are being put in place, and at about end of the year, start of next year, it will be legal. And a great example you'll see, and I'll talk about, is what's going on in California and what is coming and what will happen here in New York. So that brings us to right now. And there's a big piece about what big beverage versus startup, and I think there's a unique scenario and a few advantages for startups right now, and that is that we're founder first and founder led. People want transparency and they want to see who the founder is. They want to see where the ingredients come from. They want to know the story. And big beverage can't do that. So right now they're trying to pay celebrities. And but people are seeing through that now. You heard every week some celebrity launches some other alcohol brand and they've been working on it for years. And excuse my French, but it's all bullshit. They haven't been working on it for years. There's just a beverage company that's paid them a lot of money and now they're the founder, not the co-founder. The important piece for us and what we've learned is we help build out the insights and innovation pipelines for big beverage. So Anheuser-Busch, Heineken, Constellation. And we did that for a few years and we realized that when we created this brand and this concept and a go-to-market strategy and they would bring the liquids in, they would prioritize the commercial viability of the liquid before the actual quality of the liquid. So they need to make it for 5 cents a beverage. We have our non-alc sparkling CBD cocktails. Ours are very expensive to make, but if we were to take that to Anheuser-Busch, they'd be like, this is impossible, it's never going to work. And so what happens is they're creating incubators, accelerators, and investment groups. So now Constellation, Diageo, even 7-Eleven, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, every single one of them has an incubator, accelerator, or an investment group that funds founders and startups, and some of them actually get a better access to a deal if that is a successful enterprise. And a great example, I think, is Seedlip when they first went into Still Ventures and then moved up through, and then Diageo took a greater stake, and now it's a massive global success. So, and the other challenge with big beverage is this bureaucratic administration and red tape, trying to get anything done, whereas us as founders, you decide you want to do something, you just do it immediately, and it's pretty fun. So there's opportunities right now, and I want to talk a little bit about on-premise and off-premise and the advantages for non-alc. And this is kind of what we use when we talk to some of these on-premise locations as well as off-prem. So liquor licensing. We don't have to worry about liquor licensing. We can have alcohol flavors in alcohol occasions. Don't have to worry about any liquor licensing. The 3-tier model and the TTB, don't have to worry about that either. So we can suddenly, places that don't sell any alcohol can sell and service the alcohol occasion market, which is really important. Because we don't have to worry about the 3-tier structure, we can sell direct. We can sell direct to consumers. We can sell direct to wonderful non-alc retail stores like Midas Moonshine that you'll hear about, our favorite customer. And we can also do direct store deliveries. So I load up my Jeep with our cans and then drive around to stores and drop it off. And I get to have FaceTime, and it's fantastic. Don't have to worry about any laws, any regulations. Don't have to worry about any of it. And we're effectively selling cocktails. On-premise, socializing. I'm going to get into that actually on the next slide. But an important piece I wanted to talk about is there's this, when we went to restaurants back in the day, you would have a menu, it would have meat on one side, and then there would be like this relatively shitty vegetarian menu on the side, right? It's kind of like weird. Now when you go to a restaurant, the vegetarian, the seafood, and the meat, they're all on the same menu. Everybody's eating. No one cares what each other's eating. We anticipate that with alcohol and non-alc. We think that's what's going to be the future. You might be drinking a low alc version, you're drinking a full alc, someone's drinking a cannabis version, some might be drinking a psychedelic version, but we're all in this socializing alcohol occasion, and we're all drinking together. And that's the future that we're in process of building. So, alcohol alternatives. So I want to talk a little bit about the reasons why we're drinking and how it works. Alcohol binds to receptors, the same receptors that dopamine binds to, and dopamine is the reward center for your brain. It's involved in motivation. When you're scrolling through and you see a little cute baby or a cute dog, you get that little dopamine hit. when you're at the casino, the cha-ching, that's also a little dopamine hit. So that's kind of how alcohol works, and that's the idea behind this mood enhancement during alcohol occasions, right? Helps take the edge off, helps a little bit, helps you socialize, and that's why it's so closely tied to occasions. We have ritual, we have celebration, tradition, we have November, December, silly season, where there's just so many different holidays and everybody's drinking, and it obviously makes sense that everyone needs to chill out in January and have a bit of a dry January and drink less. Yes, we know Gen Z and millennials are drinking less and less and less by a massive, massive amount. But something I wanted to really talk about is what my understanding of the connection is between alcohol and non-alcoholic. So there's this Chinese philosopher, and he talks about if you're living in the past, you're living and you're anxious. If you're living in the future, you're stressed. But if you're living in the present, you're truly at peace. And my concept about alcohol is that alcohol helps bring us present, helps us think about what we're doing right now. And that is something that people really, really strive for. And so if one of the meaning of life is to enjoy the passage of time, I like that as a concept, then I think being present is really important. And I think alcohol occasions are important for societies all around the world. But none of us like a hangover, and we want healthier alternatives. So that's what brands are making. So we have a lot of different alternatives to alcohol now. So Nootropics. Nootropics is more about cognitive enhancement. It's more about your brain focus and function, 5-HTP, GABA. Caffeine is also one. It's the most common consumed in the world. Adaptogens is actually about reducing stress in your body. So you have a bunch of different types of mushrooms, and ashwagandha can improve cognitive performance. And we have products like Katy Perry's Dessoir that's just launched, actually tastes really good. And then we have this cannabis, lots of different cannabis technologies, which I'm going to get into in a minute, but hemp-derived cannabis, and then non-psychoactive, and then psychoactive cannabis, which is THC, Delta-8, Delta-9, those kind of things. And then, in the far future, psilocybin. Psilocybin is going to be exciting, but microdose psilocybin, right? And that's the idea, is we're trying to replicate these alcohol occasions. We're not trying to just get high and go to the moon, like taking an edible and you're high for 6 hours. You want it to be a fast onset and a fast offset, where you feel it for an hour or two like you would with alcohol. So that's kind of where the space that we play in with Flyers Cocktail Co. Overview on cannabis. So hemp marijuana, basically there's a cannabis sativa plant. If it has less than 0.3% THC, it's hemp and federally legal. And then if it has more than 0.3% THC, it's cannabis or marijuana, and it's controlled, and you can only do it on a state-by-state basis. And there's about 18 states at the moment with adult use, and it's continually changing every month. The market in New York at the moment is $2 billion. That's the black market. They anticipate it to be $5 billion in a couple of years' time. So massive, massive growth. There's a really interesting study that was done around dispensaries and alcohol sales. When a dispensary, this was over 10 years, when a dispensary opened in an area, alcohol sales went down by up to 15% in the surrounding area. So people are starting to use cannabis as an alternative for those consumption moments. California, they're the furthest ahead. They've been legal for a few years now. A few years ago, I think there was about 10 cannabis beverages. Now there's literally 580 cannabis beverages. Every type of beverage you can imagine, people are infusing it with cannabis. There's cannabis champagne, there's cannabis shots, there's cannabis cocktails, there's seltzers, there's beers, there's everything under the sun. And you can bet your ass that's coming to New York starting next year, which is very exciting. Included in that, in New York, the regulations, there's going to be on-site consumption. So people are going to, first there's going to be like smoking lounges. Everyone's going to get over that real quickly because no one wants to be hanging around people that are smoking. Then there's going to be lounges that are a little bit more premium, more sophisticated, and we think that is going to be cannabis beverage consumption lounges. You can go in and you can have a non-alcoholic product, you can have a low-dose cannabis beverage, and you can enjoy it. The idea isn't to have like 20, 30 milligrams or just get really, really high. It's to be able to have that, enjoy that occasion, but no hangover, live your life the next day. And a great little example here about consumers that consume both, 60% prefer cannabis over alcohol, and I think that's probably because the hangover element. So CBD and THC, hemp and marijuana, I touched on that already, but there's 100 cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. We're just starting to isolate better and better ones. So CBN and CBG, you might have heard of those coming around, they're fairly new. A year ago, a kilogram of CBN was $20,000. So it's very hard and very expensive to try and isolate CBN. But CBN is better for sleep, fatigue inducing. CBG, a little bit uplifting. So it's better for a little bit more energy. You want to like feel a little bit good. So now we're at a point where some products are being released with CBG and CBN isolates as well as the regular CBD. And then we have THC. So there's Delta 1, Delta 2, Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, and all sorts of stuff that we don't even know about yet. But the main one is Delta 9. That's the stuff that gets us really high. Delta 8 is like its little sister, 5 times less strong. And there's products now that are coming out. Delta 8 is this massive grey area. There's some brands that have launched with the Delta 8 product. You definitely get high from it, but you can just go to the deli and buy it. I think it's detrimental to the industry, and the state is about to squash that and get rid of it at the moment. So I think in a few months there won't be those Delta 8 products anymore. And then on CBD itself, the biggest question we get asked, particularly with our beverages, is how am I going to feel? And the way we talk about it is when you think you drink a glass of wine, the way that you would articulate how you feel from drinking a glass of wine is how you'd articulate how you feel after one of our beverages. And what I mean by that is the edge is taken off, a sense of calmness, a sense of well-being, you're a little bit relaxed, a nice deep sigh. All of that applies to drinking a CBD beverage. And so that metaphor is really helpful for us when we're talking to retailers. And we're like, you're not going to get high, there's no psychoactive element, it's fully legal, but you're just going to feel nice and relaxed a little bit. So, running short on time. So the opportunity in cannabis. Over the last 4 to 5 years, PepsiCo, Nestle, and Coca-Cola launched 1,500 brands, nearly. Anheuser-Busch, Diageo, and Constellation, Campari, all these brands also launched hundreds and hundreds of brands. Guess how many of them were cannabis or brands with CBD or THC? 0. Not one, because they can't. So for the first time ever in the history of food and beverage, all of the innovation and marketing budgets that come from big beverage cannot enter and play in the CBD and THC space. So there's, for the first time, an opportunity for founders and startups to build really good quality products. And then ideally, when these companies can play in the space, there's going to be non-linear acquisitions of those companies because it's going to be a lot easier for them to just pick them up and buy them than start them themselves. So it really is this, it's always been the David versus Goliath scenario, but right now it's like the Davids, and we're doing our best, and it's like kind of like we think a rising tide raises all ships. We're all working together to build the best versions of our products, help each other out, figure out the regulations, and have a little bit of fun. And so we launched 6 months ago. We got a little bit of press. We're in 80 retail locations now. We just won a gold, a silver, and a bronze at the New York Spirits Competition. We won silvers at the San Francisco Spirits Competition, the first CBD beverage to ever do that. So we've got a really good award farming strategy going on, and we will. The idea is to be the most awarded CBD or non-alc beverage in the US and the world by the end of the year, and we're on track for that. So, covered a lot of things, spoke really fast. I hope you understood me, and I know I'm running out of time, but if the only thing that I want you to remember is that the future is hangover free, and we're here to build it.